AITA for refusing to give my brother my expensive camera for his hobby, even though he claims I'm unsupportive. I, 37F, have a younger brother, Jake, 32M, who has always been creative and enthusiastic about photography. I've been pursuing photography professionally for the past 10 years and have invested a significant amount of money in equipment, including cameras, lenses, and accessories. One of my cameras, a high-end DSLR, costs roughly $3,500, and I use it regularly for work and personal projects. A few weeks ago, Jake called me saying he wanted to get more serious about photography and asked if he could borrow my camera. I told him I couldn't lend it to him because it's expensive and fragile, and I rely on it for my job. I also explained that it's covered by insurance for me, but if anything were to happen while someone else used it, it would be complicated and potentially very costly. Jake responded by saying that I was being selfish and unsupportive. He claimed that I was holding back because I wanted to feel superior or keep him from improving his skills. He insisted that he wasn't asking to keep it forever, just to use it for a few weeks to learn and experiment. I offered alternatives. I could teach him how to use his own entry-level camera, lend him some smaller, less expensive gear, or go on photography outings together so he could practice with guidance. He refused these alternatives, saying they weren't good enough for what he wanted to learn. I reminded him that he could rent a professional camera for a week at a photography store, which is much safer than me handing over thousands of dollars in equipment. He said renting was too expensive and that I should just lend him mine since I'm family. I explained that family doesn't automatically mean unlimited access to my tools and that I have to protect my work and investment. Jake became increasingly upset and started texting me multiple times a day. He claimed that I was unsupportive, greedy, and that I was holding him back from pursuing his passion. He even brought up other friends who let siblings borrow expensive equipment, implying that I was being unreasonable. I tried to stay calm and reiterate that I was willing to help him in ways that didn't risk my livelihood or property, but he wouldn't accept that. I spoke with our parents, hoping for some perspective. They agreed that I was right to protect my equipment, but they also expressed concern that Jake might take this personally and that it could damage our relationship. They suggested I find a way to compromise, but I struggled to see a compromise that wouldn't put my equipment at risk or interfere with my work. Some friends suggested I could lend it to him with strict conditions, like him signing a liability agreement or only using it under supervision. I considered this, but the logistics would be difficult, and I still worry about accidental damage. I also feel frustrated because Jake has a history of being careless with expensive items. In the past, he has broken electronics, lost valuable tools, and generally treated borrowed items without proper care. I tried one more approach, offering to go on a photography trip together where he could use my camera under my supervision. He rejected this, saying it wouldn't give him the freedom to experiment on his own. I explained that freedom comes with responsibility, and I cannot compromise on equipment that is essential to my career. Since then, he has stopped speaking to me directly and has posted vague messages on social media about unsupportive family and people who won't let you grow. I've received messages from mutual friends asking if I could just lend it for a bit to keep the peace, but I feel like doing so would reward reckless behavior and set a precedent that could harm my professional and personal life. I also worry about the long-term impact. If I give in now, he may assume he can borrow other expensive items in the future without consideration for the consequences. I love him and want to support his photography, but I also need to protect my investment and maintain boundaries. I feel like I've offered many alternatives that allow him to learn and grow without jeopardizing my equipment, but he refuses to accept any of them. So, AITA for refusing to lend my brother my expensive camera for his hobby. Even though he says I'm being unsupportive and our family thinks I should compromise, I feel like I'm trying to balance love, support, and responsibility, but I also don't want to create conflict that puts my livelihood at risk or encourages careless behavior. This has caused tension not only between Jake and me, but also within our family, who are divided on whether I acted reasonably. I want to maintain a positive relationship while also upholding my boundaries, but it seems like he interprets any refusal as a personal attack. I'm struggling to see a way to satisfy everyone without compromising my values or property. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious. When do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to let my fiancé's brother move in even temporarily after he lost his apartment. I, 29F, have been with my fiancé, Matt, 32M, for 5 years. We live together in a 2-bedroom apartment in a city we both love. Our place is comfortable, but not huge, and it took us years to save up and make it feel like home. We are both organized, value our routines, and depend on our apartment for stability, especially because I work from home several days a week and Matt has a demanding job with long hours. Recently, Matt's younger brother, Ryan, 27M, lost his apartment due to eviction. He called Matt, panicking, saying he had nowhere to go and asking if he could stay with us temporarily while he figures things out. Matt mentioned it to me, and I immediately felt uneasy. I've met Ryan a handful of times at family events, and while he seems polite, he has a history of being irresponsible with money, relying on family for support, and staying with friends for long periods in the past. I told Matt I didn't feel comfortable having Ryan move in. I explained that our apartment is small, our routines are important, and having someone with Ryan's track record live with us could create stress and tension. I also mentioned that I was happy to help him in other ways, assisting in finding a short-term rental or Airbnb, helping him look for a new job, or contributing to a hostel for a few nights. Matt seemed disappointed, but understood at the time. The next day, Ryan called Matt repeatedly, insisting that staying with us was the best option. He framed it as urgent, saying he had nowhere else to go and that other family members were too busy to help. Matt seemed torn, and when he brought it up again that evening, he mentioned that Ryan promised he would be careful, respect our space, and only stay a week or two. I tried to explain again that even a week could be disruptive and that any opening might lead to a longer stay. I emphasized that I wasn't refusing to help him, but I wanted to support him in ways that didn't involve him living in our apartment. Matt got frustrated and said I was being too rigid. He argued that I was overthinking it and that this was family, so it was our duty to help. I reminded him that I want to help Ryan, but not at the cost of our stability and peace of mind. I suggested alternatives like paying for a short-term rental, covering a few nights at a hostel, or helping him network for roommates or affordable apartments. Matt said he understood logically, but he also said he wanted to do the right thing and was worried that I was being unsupportive. Ryan then began texting Matt directly, expressing desperation and guilt-tripping both of us about not letting him stay. He mentioned how stressful it is to be homeless and how he's struggling to make ends meet. I started feeling anxious every time my phone rang or when Matt received messages from him. It became a source of tension in our relationship because Matt sympathized with his brother but also respected my concerns. Some of our mutual friends have said I should just let him stay for a few nights and that I'm being harsh. Others support me, pointing out that boundaries are necessary for a healthy home environment. I've thought about compromise, like letting him stay for one night, but the more I consider it, the more I realize that even short-term stays could set a precedent. Ryan has a pattern of extending temporary arrangements into longer-term living situations, and I don't want to risk that in our shared space. Matt has tried to mediate and suggested small compromises, having Ryan sleep on the couch, letting him use the apartment only during the day, or setting strict rules for a short stay. I've told him that even those arrangements make me uncomfortable. I explained that our home is not just a roof over someone's head. It's where we live, work, and unwind, and we can't treat it like a hostel. Family has started getting involved. Matt's parents have called, insisting we should help Ryan and implying that I'm being selfish. I feel guilty because I want to support my fiancé's family, but I also know that compromising our home environment could cause long-term issues. I've offered every alternative I can think of, helping him search for apartments, paying for temporary lodging, assisting with meals or transportation, and even helping him apply for jobs. Nothing seems acceptable to Ryan or our family. So, AITA for refusing to let my fiance's brother move in even temporarily after he lost his apartment. I want to help him, but I also want to protect our home, our routines, and our mental health. I feel caught between supporting family and maintaining boundaries that keep our relationship and living environment healthy. I've tried compromise, but my fiance's brother and some family members see my refusal as cold or uncaring. I want to be compassionate and helpful without compromising our stability, but I don't know if standing firm on our boundaries makes me the asshole. Every day this situation lingers, I feel anxious and guilty, and the tension between Matt, his brother, and me is growing. I just want to support Ryan in a responsible way without turning our home into a place of stress and conflict, but I fear that no matter what I do, someone will think I'm being unreasonable. I've exhausted all options that don't involve letting him live with us, and I'm at a loss. I feel like I'm doing the responsible thing for all of us, but I keep questioning if my refusal makes me the bad person in this situation. I don't want to damage my relationship with my fiancé, but I also can't compromise the life we've built together. I'm stuck between compassion, obligation, and self-preservation, and I don't know where the line is. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé move in with us after he caused a huge fight at our family gathering. So, I, 28F, live in a small 2-bedroom apartment in a decent part of the city. My sister, Laura, 32F, has been dating her fiancé, Mike, 35M, for about 3 years. They've been planning to get married later this year. I'm really close to Laura, and we've always shared everything growing up, but I've never really gotten along with Mike. There's always been something off about him. He's dismissive, sarcastic, and just kind of has this energy that makes me tense around him. I've tried to give him a fair shot, but he seems to have a knack for turning any conversation into some weird competition or making a joke at someone else's expense. Anyway, the story begins about 6 months ago. Laura told me she wanted Mike to move in with us temporarily. She said their apartment had a severe plumbing issue, and they wouldn't be able to stay there for a couple of months. I was hesitant, but I didn't want to put my sister in a difficult position, so I agreed under the condition that he would respect the space, pitch in with chores, and follow the rules of the apartment. I thought I was clear and fair. At first, things were okay. Mike was quiet and mostly kept to himself. But over the first week, I started noticing little things that annoyed me. He would leave dirty dishes in the sink for days. He used the last of anything without replacing it, and he constantly left lights on or the heat blasting in the middle of the night. I tried to bring it up gently, but he brushed me off with jokes or sarcastic comments. I tried to let it slide because, well, it was supposed to be temporary. Then came the weekend of the family gathering. Laura and Mike insisted we host my parents at our place. I agreed, figuring it would be fun and they'd stay for only a couple of hours. The evening started fine, but things escalated quickly. Mike had one too many drinks and began criticizing everything about my apartment. He commented on the layout, the furniture, my cooking, and even my dog. At first, I laughed it off, thinking he was just drunk, but then he started making personal comments about me. He said I was too controlling, too uptight, and that I needed to learn to loosen up. I got defensive and tried to explain that I have rules because it's my space and I work hard to maintain it. Mike scoffed and said, well, maybe if your sister lives somewhere nice, you wouldn't have to be so bitter. That was the last straw. I snapped, telling him that he was completely out of line and that he had no right to insult me in my own home, especially in front of my family. He laughed and said I was overreacting, which led to a full-blown argument in front of my parents and Laura. Laura tried to mediate, but she was drunk too and ended up defending Mike, saying I was being too dramatic and not understanding the stress of their situation. My parents looked uncomfortable, and my dog was barking like crazy, clearly stressed by the tension. Mike then picked up my dog and made a joke about how even the dog prefers me over you, which caused me to finally lose my temper. I told him to leave immediately. Laura tried to calm me down, but I refused to let him back in for the rest of the night. He stormed out, yelling that I was being selfish and controlling. The next morning, Laura was furious. She said I had ruined her evening and that I needed to apologize to Mike. I told her that I was not going to apologize for standing up for myself in my own home. She kept insisting, saying he's her fiancé and she expected me to be more accommodating. She brought up that it's just a few months and that I could be nicer for her sake. I reminded her that nice doesn't mean tolerating someone being verbally abusive, rude, and disrespectful in my own home. She called me cold and unsympathetic and said that if I didn't let Mike back in, it would damage our relationship permanently. Over the next few weeks, things stayed tense. Laura kept sending me long texts and calling me to guilt-trip me about how I treated her fiancé like a stranger and how this is the start of a huge problem for our family. I tried to explain that I'm not against Mike personally, but I cannot let someone treat me or my home like this. She accused me of picking sides and being unreasonable, and I just stopped responding because I couldn't have a productive conversation with her while she was so emotional. Recently, Laura asked again if Mike could come stay with us, and this time I flat out refused. I told her that our past experience showed that it wouldn't work and that I can't put myself in a position to tolerate disrespectful behavior again. She got extremely upset, calling me selfish and saying that I'm making her choose between me and her fiancé. She said that if I really loved her, I would sacrifice a little comfort for family. I said no, that I love her, but not at the expense of my mental health and personal space. She hasn't spoken to me properly since then, and our parents have also been subtly siding with her, saying I should consider her feelings. I feel like I'm justified because I have the right to set boundaries in my own home, and Mike has proven he cannot respect them. I'm willing to let Laura come over or stay temporarily herself, but Mike is a different story. She keeps framing this as me being selfish and difficult, but I feel like it's about safety, respect, and boundaries. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé move in with us again after he caused a huge fight at our family gathering. AITA for refusing to let my sister move in with me indefinitely, even though she claims I owe her for everything she did for me growing up. I, 33F, have a younger sister, Megan, 29F, and we've always had a complicated relationship. Growing up, she was the golden child in many ways, more praised by our parents, allowed more freedom, and rarely disciplined. I never resented her for this at the time, but it shaped how I approached my own independence. Despite that, we were close, and I always appreciated how she looked out for me in certain situations, like helping me with school projects or covering for me when I was in trouble with our parents. About 6 months ago, Megan went through a breakup and was left without a stable place to live. She called me asking if she could stay with me temporarily while she got back on her feet. At the time, I was working full-time, had a partner, and rented a 2-bedroom apartment with limited space. I hesitated because I was worried about the impact on our household, but ultimately agreed for a short period, making it clear that she needed to find a new place within a few weeks. Megan agreed. At first, things were okay. She stayed in the guest room, helped a little around the apartment, and seemed motivated to get a job and find her own place. I even helped her update her resume and apply for positions. But after about a month, it became clear she wasn't making any progress. She started staying home all day, sleeping in late, and rarely applying to jobs. She began leaving dishes in the sink, piles of laundry, and clutter in common spaces. She also started inviting friends over without asking, sometimes bringing more than one person at a time. I tried having a serious conversation with her. I reminded her that the agreement was temporary and that living here indefinitely was not possible. I explained that my partner and I have routines and responsibilities that cannot be disrupted, and that having her stay longer without contributing or making an effort would create tension and resentment. Megan reacted defensively. She said I was ungrateful for everything she had done for me in the past and insisted that I owe her shelter because of the sacrifices she made growing up. She even implied that by refusing to let her stay, I was betraying our bond and being cruel. The situation has caused tension in my apartment. My partner, Alex, 34M, supports me but is frustrated by the lack of space and constant disruption. He has pointed out that Megan's presence has affected our daily routines, including work-from-home schedules, meal planning, and even bedtime routines with our pets. Even small tasks like cooking or relaxing in the living room feel complicated because she dominates common areas without consideration. I've tried multiple compromises. I offered to pay part of a rental deposit or short-term sublet for her while she looked for a place. I suggested that she could stay on weekends or during certain periods if she actively pursued employment and housing. She refused all alternatives, saying that nothing is acceptable except living with me full-time. She also tried to involve other family members, telling them I am being cruel and refusing to help family. Some relatives have called or messaged me, pressuring me to allow her to move in, arguing that I am acting selfishly by refusing to prioritize family. I feel guilty because I love Megan and want to support her, but I also feel manipulated. Giving in would not help her in the long term. It would allow her to avoid responsibility and likely create resentment between us. I provided emotional support, financial advice, and guidance in ways that don't compromise my household, but living together indefinitely under these circumstances is unsustainable. I'm also worried about precedent. Allowing her to stay without contributing or showing effort could set the tone for future interactions where she feels entitled to impose on my household. I want to maintain our relationship, but I also need to protect my home, my relationship, and my mental well-being. I've tried explaining my perspective calmly, offering reasonable alternatives, and maintaining boundaries, but nothing seems to satisfy her. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister move in with me indefinitely, even though she insists I owe her for everything she did while I was growing up. AITA for refusing to let my friend stay with me after she moved across the country, even though she says I'm being selfish. I, 36F, have a friend, Jenna, 34F, who I've known since college. We've always been close, sharing trips, holidays, and family events. Recently, she moved across the country for a new job and reached out, asking if she could stay with me temporarily while she looked for her own apartment. I live in a small 2-bedroom apartment with my partner and our dog, and our space is limited. I also work full-time and have a structured routine that requires a quiet, orderly home. When Jenna asked if she could stay, I explained that I wasn't comfortable having a long-term guest in our apartment due to space and routine constraints. I told her I could help in other ways. I could help her find short-term rentals, look for available apartments, or give her rides to interviews and viewings. I also offered to help her with moving costs or temporary storage if needed. Jenna responded that those options were not the same as living with a friend and implied that I was being cold. Over the next few days, she continued pressuring me, saying she didn't want to be alone in a new city, that hotels were too expensive, and that my place would be like a home away from home. I tried to explain that having her stay would disrupt our household and our privacy. I also reminded her that in the past, whenever she has stayed with friends or family, even short visits often turned into weeks or months, creating tension and arguments. Jenna accused me of being selfish and said I wasn't a real friend if I didn't put her needs first. She pointed out that she had supported me through difficult times in college, when I was going through a breakup and financial troubles, implying that I owed her this favor in return. I explained that past support doesn't obligate me to compromise my living situation now, especially given how disruptive long-term guests have been historically. I tried to offer a compromise. She could stay for one night or even just a weekend while she looked at apartments, but she rejected this as insufficient. She said a weekend wouldn't allow her to settle in, unpack, or adjust to the new city, which she argued was crucial for her transition. I reiterated that any extended stay was not possible and suggested affordable short-term housing options, including sublets, extended stay hotels, or Airbnb rentals, which would allow her independence while she got established. Jenna then began contacting mutual friends to pressure me indirectly. She framed the situation as if I was being unsupportive and turning my back on her at a critical time. Some friends reached out privately, urging me to reconsider and just let her stay for a while. I explained my concerns, including space, routine, and potential strain on my relationship with my partner, but the advice mostly ignored these points. I feel guilty because I value Jenna's friendship and want her to feel supported, but I also have to balance my own boundaries and the needs of my household. Having her move would likely cause stress for everyone involved, and based on past experiences with guests, I worry that even a temporary stay could extend indefinitely or lead to conflicts. I also feel frustrated that she is framing my refusal as a moral failing rather than a practical limitation. Since I refused, Jenna has been distant and curt in our messages. She continues to hint that I'm selfish and that she expected better from me. I've tried to maintain communication, offer guidance on apartment hunting, and suggest ways to help her feel welcome in the new city without living together, but she dismisses these alternatives. So, AITA for refusing to let my friend stay with me after she moved across the country, even though she feels abandoned and family and mutual friends think I should compromise. I feel like I am attempting to support her while maintaining healthy boundaries, but she interprets any refusal as a personal slight. This has put strain not only on our friendship, but also on my partner and our home life, who are concerned about disruption and privacy. I want to help Jenna adjust and feel welcome in her new city, but I cannot compromise my own stability and routine. I also want to set a precedent that friendship doesn't mean sacrificing personal boundaries, even in times of need, without causing long-term tension or resentment. I hope there's a way to navigate this situation that keeps our friendship intact while respecting the limits of what I can provide. I am firm on my boundaries, but I also want to show support in other meaningful ways. AITA for refusing to let my childhood friend stay at my apartment after she got evicted. I, 34F, have a childhood friend, Sarah, 33F, who I've known since we were 7. We grew up in the same neighborhood, went to the same schools, and shared countless summers and family gatherings. Our friendship has always been close, though over the years, our lives have gone in very different directions. I have a stable career as a project manager and live in a small but comfortable apartment I've worked hard to furnish and maintain. I like my routines and have always valued my space, especially because I work from home several days a week. Sarah, on the other hand, has had a much more unstable adult life. She's had multiple jobs that didn't last long, moved around frequently, and struggled financially for years. She's also had issues with impulsive decisions, some poor financial habits, and difficulties keeping consistent housing. Despite all of this, I've always tried to support her emotionally and occasionally helped her with short-term solutions when she needed guidance or temporary assistance. Recently, Sarah called me in a panic. She had just been evicted from her apartment and said she had nowhere to go. She asked if she could stay with me for a few weeks while she figured things out. She said it would be temporary and promised to be careful, respectful, and tidy. She framed it as an emergency, implying that without me, she might have to sleep on the streets or couch surf with friends she didn't feel comfortable bothering. I felt torn because I care about her deeply, but I also knew that having her move in could be stressful and potentially disruptive. My apartment is small, and my work and personal life rely heavily on routine and quiet. I explained to Sarah that I couldn't have her live with me, even temporarily. I offered alternatives, helping her find a short-term Airbnb, assisting her in contacting other friends who could host her for a night or two, or helping her search for a new apartment quickly. I tried to be empathetic, but firm. Sarah did not take it well. She accused me of being selfish and uncaring, saying I was putting my comfort above our friendship. She argued that this was a crisis and that family or friends are supposed to help in emergencies. She said she had no one else she could turn to and that I was the only person she trusted. I told her again that refusing to let her stay doesn't mean I don't care. It just means I need to maintain my own space and stability. She said I was being rigid and cold and implied that if I really cared about her, I would let her in. After that conversation, Sarah began messaging me constantly, sometimes multiple times a day. She would describe her situation in detail, often with messages meant to guilt me into agreeing. She said she had nowhere to sleep and that other friends had already turned her down. I tried to respond politely, reiterating that I couldn't let her move in, but that I could still help her in other ways, but it started to wear on me. I felt anxious and stressed every time my phone rang, and it was affecting my focus at work and my own mental health. I considered compromise. I thought about letting her stay a single night or offering a space for her to rest during the day while she searched for housing. But I realized that even short-term accommodations could quickly become extended, and her history of instability suggested that a temporary stay could turn into weeks or longer. I also worried about the emotional consequences. If she stayed with me and caused tension, I feared our friendship could be damaged permanently. Friends and some family members have told me I'm being unreasonable and that I should help her in a more direct way by letting her stay. Others have supported my decision, pointing out that boundaries are necessary to protect both my friendship and my well-being. I feel torn because I want to help Sarah, but I also know that compromise in my home and routines could create stress and resentment for both of us. Sarah's continued insistence has started affecting my relationship with mutual friends. Some of them have asked why I haven't helped her, implying that I'm not being a good friend. This makes me feel guilty, even though I know logically that my refusal is about maintaining my personal boundaries and ensuring I can support her in ways that don't put either of us in a stressful situation. So, AITA for refusing to let my childhood friend stay at my apartment after she got evicted. I want to support her and be there for her in meaningful ways, but I also need to protect my home, mental health, and work environment. I've offered alternatives, compromise, and guidance, but she interprets my refusal as rejection. I feel like I'm caught between wanting to help and needing to preserve my stability, and I'm struggling with guilt, anxiety, and the fear that our friendship might be damaged permanently. I've tried to find solutions that work for both of us, but every time I suggest an alternative, she insists it's not enough. I feel like I'm being forced to choose between helping her in a way that makes me uncomfortable or facing her anger and disappointment. I just want to maintain our friendship without compromising my life, and I don't know if standing firm makes me the asshole. AITA for refusing to lend my brother money for his emergency and now dealing with family fallout? I, 32F, have always been the responsible sibling in my family. I live in a mid-sized city, have a stable job in IT, and I've managed to save a reasonable amount over the years. My younger brother, Jake, 28M, on the other hand, has had a much more chaotic life. He's had several short-term jobs, moved around frequently, and has a habit of spending recklessly. Our parents have often bailed him out financially, and my father in particular has had endless patience with him. A few months ago, Jay called me panicked. He had apparently been behind on his rent for 2 months, his car broke down, and his credit cards were maxed out. He told me he desperately needed $2,500 to cover everything or he'd be out on the streets. I was shocked because he had a job that, even if modest, should have covered at least part of these expenses. When I asked why he hadn't saved or asked our parents first, he got defensive and said, I didn't want to bother them. I told him I couldn't just give him $2,500. I explained that while I cared about him, I couldn't enable this pattern of irresponsibility. I offered to help him budget, find a side job, or look for assistance programs, but he insisted it had to be money directly. He was angry and started guilt-tripping me, saying I was being cold, that I didn't care about him, and that I had everything and never shared. I tried to stay calm and reminded him that my finances weren't limitless and that helping him in the past had only allowed him to fall further behind. He ended the call frustrated, saying he'd never ask me for anything again and that I was dead to him. Over the next few weeks, things escalated. Our parents tried to mediate, suggesting that I could lend him a smaller amount, like $1,000, but I refused. They argued that families should support each other in emergencies, and they were shocked I wouldn't step in. I explained again that I was concerned about creating dependency and that helping him without addressing his financial habits would only make things worse. Jake stopped talking to me entirely. He posted on social media, subtly implying that I was selfish and didn't care about family. Some of our extended family members started texting me, asking why I wouldn't help him, and some even sided with him. My parents, frustrated with the stalemate, decided to give him the full $2,500 themselves, saying they didn't want to see him struggle. I felt a mix of relief and resentment because I knew giving him the money would only continue the cycle. The fallout has been rough. Jake has since messaged me once, asking me to help him move into a new apartment because he doesn't have enough hands. I refused, citing the same reasoning about boundaries and responsibility. He replied curtly, saying he couldn't believe I was this detached and that I was choosing money over family. Family gatherings have become tense. Relatives I used to be close to now make passive-aggressive comments about how I should learn to be more generous. My parents are disappointed, but still supportive of me, though they occasionally sigh about how I could try harder. Even my partner has noticed I'm more stressed around family events, and we've had long discussions about whether I overreacted. I've reflected on my actions, and I understand why some people might see me as unsympathetic. I do care about my brother deeply, and I've helped him in other non-financial ways, offering advice, helping him find job leads, even fixing his car when it broke down in the past. But this pattern of him asking for large sums and expecting them to solve his problems feels unsustainable and unfair to me. I worry that by refusing, I've damaged my relationship with him permanently. At the same time, I feel that giving in would only reinforce poor financial habits and create resentment toward me when I inevitably say no in the future. I don't want to be painted as the bad sibling for drawing boundaries, but I also don't want to be complicit in enabling someone's repeated mistakes. I've considered writing a detailed message explaining my perspective, but I fear it might come off as preachy or judgmental. I've also thought about offering structured help, like a loan with repayment terms, but I know he wouldn't stick to it, and it could create more conflict. My partner thinks I'm doing the right thing by protecting my own financial stability and setting clear boundaries, but I can't shake the feeling that I might be perceived as cruel. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to give my brother money and sticking to my boundaries, even though it's caused family tension and fallout. AITA for refusing to let my friend move in with me indefinitely, even though she insists I owe her for helping her in the past. This is going to be long, but I want to give all the context. I, 32F, have a longtime friend, Rachel, 31F, who has been in my life since college. Over the years, we've supported each other through numerous challenges, breakups, family crises, financial struggles. I've helped her financially on a few occasions, lent her my car, and even let her stay with me for short periods during difficult times. I've always felt that our friendship was mutual, and I never expected anything beyond normal reciprocity. About 4 months ago, Rachel went through a messy breakup. She lost her job shortly after, and her apartment lease was ending. She called me, panicked, asking if she could move in with me temporarily until she got back on her feet. At the time, I was working full-time, living in a 2-bedroom apartment with my partner, Sam, 34M, and our dog. I hesitated because I was concerned about space, routines, and the impact on my household, but I ultimately agreed to a short-term stay, making it clear that she needed to actively seek a new job and housing. Rachel agreed and moved in. The first couple of weeks were okay. Rachel stayed in the guest room, kept her area mostly tidy, and seemed motivated to look for work. I helped her update her resume and apply to several positions. But after a month, it became clear that she wasn't taking things seriously. She spent most of her days on social media, watching TV, or hanging out with friends. She rarely applied for jobs and ignored apartment listings I sent her. She also began leaving dishes in the sink, piles of laundry around the apartment, and clutter in common areas. She started inviting friends over without asking, sometimes with multiple people at a time. I tried talking to her multiple times. I reminded Rachel that the arrangement was temporary and that living with me indefinitely was not an option. I explained that my household has routines, responsibilities, and a partner who needs space, and that allowing her to stay indefinitely without contributing or showing effort would be unsustainable. Rachel became defensive and insisted that I was selfish and ungrateful. She repeatedly told me that I owe her because I helped her in the past and that refusing to let her stay was cruel. The situation has caused tension in my household. Sam is supportive but stressed. Our schedules, meals, and private time have all been disrupted. Rachel dominates common areas, leaves personal items everywhere, and sometimes expects us to adjust our daily routines around her. Even minor things like having friends over or cooking meals have become complicated because she's constantly around and disregards household norms. I've tried multiple compromises. I offered to help with rental deposits, suggested she consider short-term Airbnb options, and even offered to extend her stay for a few weeks if she actively searched for jobs and apartments. She refused all alternatives, insisting that living with me full-time was the only acceptable solution. She also started involving other friends, telling them I was being cruel and refusing to help someone in need, which led to more pressure on me. Some mutual friends reached out, suggesting I should just let her stay because of our history and how much I've helped her in the past. I feel guilty because I want to help Rachel, but I also feel manipulated. Giving in would enable her to avoid responsibility, and it would likely create long-term resentment between us. I've supported her emotionally, financially, and practically, but living together indefinitely under these circumstances is not support. It's an imposition. I'm also concerned about precedent. If I allow her to stay indefinitely without contributing or showing effort, it may encourage her to rely on me for other aspects of her life, and it could permanently affect our friendship and my household. I've tried setting clear boundaries, offering alternatives, and communicating respectfully, but she refuses to acknowledge them and frames my refusals as moral failings. So, AITA for refusing to let my friend move in with me indefinitely, even though she insists I owe her for everything I've done for her in the past. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to lend my sister money to pay off her debts, even though she says I'm being unfair. I, 39F, have a sister, Amanda, 35F, who has always been a bit financially reckless. She has a good job now, but over the years she's accumulated significant credit card debt, car loans, and other personal debts. She has asked me for help before, and I have occasionally lent her small amounts that she repaid, but her financial habits have not improved. I've tried to offer advice, budgeting tips, and resources, but she tends to ignore them until she's in crisis again. Recently, Amanda called me, panicked, saying that she had overdrawn her bank account, couldn't pay her credit card bills, and that her car insurance was about to lapse. She asked if I could loan her $5,000 to cover everything. I was shocked because this is a substantial amount, and lending it would put me in a precarious financial situation, considering I have a mortgage, living expenses, and my own savings goals. I explained that I could not lend her $5,000. I told her I was willing to help in other ways, like reviewing her budget, finding debt consolidation programs, or even helping her negotiate with creditors for lower payments or deferred plans. I also suggested she could take out a small personal loan herself to consolidate her debts or find temporary work to help bridge the gap. Amanda reacted very negatively. She accused me of being cold, selfish, and unsupportive. She said I should prioritize family over money and that I was putting my finances before a relationship. She claimed that I had the means to help and that refusing was a betrayal. I tried to explain that my refusal wasn't about not caring. It was about maintaining boundaries and avoiding putting myself in financial jeopardy. I reminded her that in the past, when I lent her smaller amounts, she sometimes delayed repayment or spent money on non-essential items. Amanda then brought our parents into the situation. She told them I was refusing to help her in a real crisis and implied that I was being harsh and selfish. My parents called me, expressing concern that I wasn't supporting my sister. I explained the full context, including my attempts to guide her toward financial responsibility and the risks involved in lending such a large sum. They sympathized somewhat, but still suggested I consider helping her financially, framing it as a family obligation. Some friends of Amanda's have also weighed in, saying I should just lend her the money and let it go, arguing that family support is more important than money. Others agree with me, saying that enabling repeated financial irresponsibility can be harmful and that it's reasonable to set boundaries to protect my own financial well-being. I've considered compromise, like lending a smaller, more manageable amount or co-signing a loan to help her consolidate debts, but I worry this could create additional stress and risk for me. I've also considered offering to pay just the minimum bills temporarily to prevent late fees while she arranges her finances, but Amanda insisted she needed the full $5,000 to feel relieved. Since I refused, Amanda has been distant and somewhat hostile. She has sent messages implying that I don't care about her and that I am letting her suffer unnecessarily. I still try to maintain communication, offering advice and support in other ways, but she seems unwilling to accept anything that doesn't involve a large cash infusion. I feel guilty because I want to help her and alleviate her stress, but I also recognize that my involvement in this manner could harm both my financial stability and her long-term financial habits. I feel like I've exhausted reasonable options to support her without compromising myself. So, AITA for refusing to lend my sister $5,000 to cover her debts, even though she says I'm being unfair and family should come first. I feel like I'm trying to balance love, responsibility, and boundaries, but I am struggling with guilt and concern over how this affects our relationship and family perception. I want her to learn financial independence and responsibility, but she sees my refusal as a personal attack. I hope there's a way to maintain a positive relationship while still enforcing necessary boundaries. But right now, it feels like any compromise would put me at risk or reinforce her pattern of relying on others instead of managing her finances responsibly. This situation has also caused tension in our family. My parents are disappointed in my refusal, and some relatives are subtly pressuring me to relent. I'm committed to helping Amanda in ways that are sustainable and safe for both of us, but she sees this as insufficient. I need an outside perspective on whether standing firm makes me unreasonable or if I'm justified in prioritizing boundaries and financial responsibility. AITA for refusing to let my best friend move into my apartment after a breakup. I, 30F, have been living in a one-bedroom apartment in the city for about 4 years. I work as a software engineer and spend a lot of time at home, both for work and because I enjoy having a personal space that's calm and organized. I like routines, clean spaces, and generally keeping my home life separate from social obligations. My best friend, Lisa, 29F, has been part of my life since college. We've supported each other through breakups, job changes, and family drama, and I consider her one of the most important people in my life. Recently, Lisa went through a particularly bad breakup. Her ex moved out abruptly, leaving her with a lot of emotional baggage, some financial stress, and a temporary sense of homelessness because she had been living in his apartment. She called me, visibly upset, and asked if she could move into my apartment temporarily until she got back on her feet. At first, I hesitated. My apartment is small, and my life relies heavily on having personal space and a predictable routine. I told Lisa I needed to think about it, and I explained that while I wanted to support her, I was concerned about the impact of having someone stay long-term in a one-bedroom apartment where I also work from home. I suggested alternatives, helping her find a short-term rental, staying with mutual friends for a few nights, or even helping her cover the cost of a hotel until she could find a place. I try to frame it as offering support while maintaining boundaries. Lisa didn't react well. She started crying and said that she didn't know where else to go and that all her other friends were busy or unwilling to help. She said she needed a stable place to stay, not just temporary arrangements. She argued that since we've been friends for so long, it felt like I was turning my back on her in a moment of crisis. I explained that I wasn't refusing to help her in general, just that I couldn't offer my home as a living space. I reiterated that I was willing to help her find alternatives and even offered to assist her with moving logistics or paying for a few days in a temporary place. The situation escalated when Lisa showed up at my apartment unannounced, carrying some of her belongings. She said she just wanted to drop things off for a night while she figured out her next steps. I told her firmly that she could not stay, even for a night, because my apartment is my workspace and sanctuary. She became upset and said I was selfish and not being a real friend. I tried to stay calm and reminded her that my boundaries don't mean I don't care about her. After that, she began texting and calling constantly, often late at night, asking if I had changed my mind. She also started mentioning in conversations with mutual friends that I refused to help her when she was vulnerable, which made me feel even more guilty. Some friends have said I'm justified in protecting my space, while others argue I could have made a small exception given the circumstances. I considered compromise, like letting her stay a weekend or letting her store some belongings in my apartment while she stayed elsewhere. but it didn't feel like a real solution. Any stay, even short-term, could quickly turn a longer-term living, and I knew that would disrupt my work and personal life. I also worried about tension. Lisa is emotional and sometimes unpredictable when she's upset, and having her in my space could lead to arguments or emotional strain. Matt, my partner, supports my decision and reminded me that boundaries are necessary, even with people we love. He pointed out that helping someone doesn't always mean letting them live in your home, and that assisting with resources or logistics can be equally supportive. I understand this logically, but emotionally, I feel guilty and worried that Lisa will see my refusal as rejection or a failure of our friendship. So, AITA for refusing to let my best friend move into my apartment after her breakup. I want to help her, but I also need to maintain my home, routines, and mental health. I've offered alternatives, compromise, and support, but she interprets my refusal as cold or selfish. Every day, I feel stressed and anxious about the situation, and I fear that my decision could permanently affect our friendship, even though I believe I'm doing the responsible thing for both of us. I want to be compassionate without compromising my life, but I feel trapped between helping her and protecting my space. I don't know if standing firm makes me the asshole. I've exhausted every option that doesn't involve her living with me, and I still feel guilty for refusing her request. I want to support her recovery from this breakup, but I also want to keep my home and peace intact. I've tried to explain that my refusal is about boundaries, not love, but she continues to insist that I'm making her struggle unnecessarily. I feel caught between loyalty to my friend and self-preservation, and I don't know if either choice leaves me in the right. AITA for confronting my cousin over something that happened years ago and causing a huge family fight. This all started about a month ago, but the roots go back nearly a decade. I, 29F, have a cousin, Erica, 31F, who I was very close to growing up. Our families have always been intertwined. Holidays, summer trips, birthdays, we practically grew up together. But over the last 10 years, things have shifted. Erica got married early, moved 2 states away, and started a very picture-perfect life online. I, on the other hand, took a different path. I struggled with mental health in my early 20s, moved around a lot, and didn't follow a linear career path. Despite all of this, I've managed to carve out a decent life for myself, even if it's not as Instagram-worthy as hers. About a month ago, I was scrolling through social media and came across an old friend's post about family secrets revealed after years. Curious, I clicked, and what I saw threw me for a loop. Apparently, years ago, Erica had spread a rumor about me to our extended family that was completely false. She claimed I had cheated on a boyfriend and that I had been reckless with my life in ways that weren't true. This rumor had circulated during a particularly low period in my life, and I had felt its effects indirectly. People who barely knew me started judging me. Family members subtly distanced themselves, and I carried that stigma silently for years because confronting it then felt impossible. I didn't know Erica had started it, though, until this post inadvertently confirmed it. I was livid. I felt a mix of anger, betrayal, and hurt. I realized that I had been carrying a shadow of someone else's lies for years, and it was time to address it. I decided to call Erica. I tried to remain calm at first, but the conversation quickly escalated. I told her I knew what she had done, how it had affected my life, and that it was completely unacceptable. Erica immediately went on the defensive, saying things like I was young and didn't know better, and I didn't think it would matter after all these years. I told her that not thinking it would matter didn't erase the consequences and that she owed me a real apology. The conversation ended without any resolution, and I was still seething. I then made the decision to confront our family about what had happened. At a small family gathering, I brought it up carefully, explaining the rumor, how it had spread, and how it impacted my life. My parents were shocked, as were several relatives. Erica, predictably, denied being malicious, insisting that it had just been a misunderstanding and that I was reading too much into it after all this time. That's when things got heated. Other family members started taking sides. Some said I should let it go because it happened so long ago, while others agreed that Erica had been wrong. The confrontation didn't stop there. My uncle, who has always had a soft spot for Erica, defended her fiercely, saying I was making mountains out of molehills, and that bringing this up now was tearing the family apart. I told him that I wasn't trying to start a fight, but I had the right to address something that had harmed me for years. This led to a shouting match in the living room where long-buried grievances from both sides resurfaced. People who I hadn't seen in years were suddenly sharing half-truths and opinions about my personal life. Erica accused me of trying to ruin her reputation, while I accused her of trying to ruin mine years ago. It became messy and emotional, with both sides digging their heels in. After that, our extended family gathering dissolved into silence and awkwardness. A few relatives later approached me privately, saying they were sorry I had to go through that and that Erica's behavior was unacceptable. Others, however, told me I should have let it go for the sake of family harmony, arguing that bringing up old grudges just makes everything worse. Erica has since stopped speaking to me directly, and she's been posting vague messages on social media that feel like passive-aggressive shots. Some family members have reached out to both of us separately, trying to mediate, but it seems like neither of us is willing to back down. I feel conflicted. On one hand, I don't regret telling the truth and holding Erica accountable. I had carried the weight of her lies for years, and addressing it felt necessary for my own mental health and closure. On the other hand, the fallout has been intense. Several relatives haven't spoken to me in weeks, and holidays are now tense. Some have even accused me of overreacting and being vindictive. I'm trying to maintain my boundaries and not apologize for seeking the truth, but I can't help feeling guilty that the family dynamic has become so strained. Since this happened, I've reflected on whether I could have approached it differently. I considered writing a private letter to Erica first, but I felt that direct confrontation was necessary to truly address the issue. I also thought about whether I should have kept it within a smaller circle, rather than bringing it up at a large family gathering, but part of me felt that airing it publicly was important for transparency. My mental health and emotional well-being have improved since speaking up, but I know the family rift may last much longer. So, AITA for confronting Erica about a decade-old rumor that had serious consequences for me. Even though it has caused a major family fight, I don't want to be the villain in this story, but I also don't want to let past injustices slide. I'm trying to be honest and assertive, but the reaction from family has left me questioning whether I handled this appropriately. I just want closure, accountability, and a chance to move forward without the burden of that lie hanging over me. Did I go too far? Or was this confrontation justified after all these years? AITA for refusing to let my cousin move in with me indefinitely, even though she insists I owe her after she helped me financially in college? This is going to be long, but I want to give the full context so people understand why I feel conflicted. I, 34F, have a cousin, Emily, 32F, who has been like a sister to me growing up. Our families are very close, and we spend almost every holiday together. When I was in college, Emily helped me in ways I never forgot. She lent me money for books, gave me rides to campus, and even let me stay with her for a few weeks when I couldn't afford my dorm during summer break. I've always appreciated her support, and I made sure to stay in contact and return favors when I could. A few months ago, Emily went through a very difficult breakup. She lost her apartment due to unpaid rent, and her family couldn't accommodate her for long-term housing. She called me in tears, saying she had nowhere to go and asking if she could stay with me temporarily while she got back on her feet. At the time, I was living with my partner, Mark, 35M, in a 2-bedroom apartment with limited space, working full-time, and trying to balance household responsibilities. I hesitated because I knew having another adult living with us long-term would be stressful, but I ultimately agreed to a short-term stay. I made it clear that she needed to make a plan to find her own apartment and contribute to household responsibilities. Emily agreed at the time. Initially, everything seemed fine. She stayed in the guest room, helped a little around the apartment, and seemed motivated to find a new job and place to live. I even helped her update her resume, applied to several jobs with her, and gave advice on potential rentals. However, after about a month, it became clear that she wasn't taking these steps seriously. She began sleeping in late, spending most of her days on social media or watching TV, and rarely applied to jobs or responded to rental inquiries. She also started leaving dirty dishes in the sink, piles of laundry around the apartment, and clutter in the common areas. She invited friends over frequently without asking, sometimes bringing multiple people at a time. I tried talking to her several times, calmly but firmly. I reminded Emily that the agreement was temporary and that living with me indefinitely was not an option. I explained that my household has routines, responsibilities, and a partner who needs space, and that allowing her to stay long-term without contributing or making an effort would be disruptive and unsustainable. Emily became defensive, accusing me of being selfish and ungrateful for all the time she helped me in the past. She insisted that I owe her because of what she did for me in college, and that refusing to let her stay was cruel. She also implied that our relationship could be permanently damaged if I didn't allow her to stay. The situation has created tension in my household. Mark is frustrated because the apartment feels crowded and chaotic, and our daily routines are constantly disrupted. Even simple tasks like cooking dinner, relaxing in the living room, or working from home have become complicated because Emily dominates common spaces and disregards the rules I set for the household. Our dog has also been stressed by the change in environment, adding another layer of responsibility for Mark and me. I have tried multiple compromises. I offer to help cover a rental deposit or short-term Airbnb for her while she searched for housing. I even suggested that she could stay for weekends or a few nights a week if she actively looked for jobs and apartments. She refused all alternatives, insisting that only living with me full-time was acceptable. She also involved other family members, telling them that I was being cruel and refusing to help family in need, which led to even more pressure. Some relatives called or texted me, suggesting I should let her stay because I owe her for past help and that family obligations should take priority over my household needs. I feel torn because I do care about Emily and want to support her, but I also feel manipulated. Giving in would not help her in the long term. It would allow her to avoid responsibility and create resentment on both sides. I've been supportive in other ways, offering advice, helping financially in limited ways, and giving emotional support. But living together indefinitely under these circumstances is not support. It is a burden. I'm also concerned about precedent. If I allow her to stay indefinitely without contributing, she may continue to rely on me for other aspects of her life, and it could permanently alter our relationship and my household. I've tried to maintain clear boundaries, offered practical alternatives, and communicated respectfully, but nothing seems to satisfy her. So, AITA for refusing to let my cousin move in with me indefinitely, even though she insists I owe her for everything she did to help me in college. AITA for refusing to let my cousin move in after he lost his job, even though my family says I'm being heartless. I, 41F, have a cousin, Mark, 35M, who has always had a laid-back personality but struggles with responsibility. Over the years, he has bounced between roommates, short-term rentals, and living with friends whenever life gets tough. He's charming and fun, and I genuinely care about him, but he has a history of taking advantage of people's generosity. Recently, Mark lost his job unexpectedly. He called me in a panic, saying he couldn't pay rent, bills, or cover basic expenses. He asked if he could move in with me until he got back on his feet. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment with my husband and our 2 children, and while I love Mark, I was immediately concerned about space, boundaries, and the potential for disruption in our home. I told him I couldn't have a move-in. I explained that my household is structured around work schedules, school routines, and my children's needs. I also mentioned that I had financial commitments and that taking him in could create strain. I offered alternatives. I could help him update his resume, connect him with job openings, assist with temporary housing options, or even cover part of his rent directly to a landlord. Mark reacted poorly. He accused me of being unsupportive and cold, claiming that family should come first and that helping him wasn't optional. He insisted that moving in would only be temporary and that he would respect all rules. I explained that temporary often turns into months or longer, based on past experience with him and mutual friends. I also emphasized that I couldn't guarantee boundaries would be respected in a shared space. After this conversation, my parents called me. They said I was too harsh and that I should put family above convenience or comfort. They suggested I let him stay, framing it as the compassionate choice. I tried to explain my concerns, including potential tension with my husband, disruption to my children's routines, and the risk of enabling patterns of dependency. My parents were dismissive and said I was overthinking, implying that being generous in times of need should be a priority. Some extended family members have also chimed in. They argue that I'm being selfish, that Mark is family, and that I should make it work. Others have told me I'm justified in setting boundaries, especially given my household responsibilities and prior experience with him. The mixed messages make it difficult to determine whether I'm overreacting. Mark continues to pressure me, now through text and social media messages, saying that I don't care about him and that I'm making him feel abandoned. He claims that other friends and relatives would help without hesitation, implying that I'm unreasonable for not doing the same. I've tried to reiterate that I care deeply, but that my way of supporting him doesn't involve him moving in. I have offered practical help, emotional support, and guidance, but he rejects anything that doesn't include living in my home. I have considered compromise. For instance, I could let him stay for a night or two, or allow him to spend time here during the day while he searches for a job. However, given his history of overstaying his welcome, I worry this would quickly escalate into a longer stay. I also worry about setting a precedent where family can demand access to my home without regard for my household's rules or comfort. I feel torn. I want to support Mark and ensure he has a safety net, but I also have to protect my children, my marriage, and the stability of my household. Past experience has shown that without strict boundaries, temporary arrangements often lead to tension, stress, and resentment. I also feel frustrated that my offers of assistance are being dismissed as insufficient. So, AITA for refusing to let my cousin move in after he lost his job, even though family members are saying I should prioritize compassion and helping him. Directly, I feel like I'm trying to balance love, responsibility, and boundaries, but my refusal is being interpreted as a lack of care. I want him to regain independence and stability, but I also want to maintain a healthy, peaceful environment for my family. This situation has caused tension within our family. My parents are disappointed, Mark is upset, and some relatives are subtly pressuring me to relent. I want to help him without compromising my household, but it feels like any alternative support is considered inadequate. I'm struggling to find a solution that preserves both family relationships and personal boundaries. I hope it's possible to support him emotionally and practically without creating long-term disruption. But right now, standing firm feels like the only way to protect my family and our home. AITA for refusing to let my cousin stay with me after she lost her apartment. I, 32F, have a cousin, Megan, 29F, who I've been close to since childhood. We grew up like sisters, attending family events together and supporting each other through school and early adulthood. Over the past few years, Megan has had a lot of instability in her life. She struggled to maintain steady employment, moved frequently, and occasionally made impulsive decisions that led to financial stress. I, on the other hand, have a stable career as a marketing manager, live alone in a one-bedroom apartment. I've worked hard to make a peaceful home and maintain a structured routine. A couple of weeks ago, Megan called me in tears. She had just been evicted from her apartment due to missed rent payments and said she had nowhere to go. She asked if she could move in with me temporarily while she figured out her next steps. She promised it would only be a few weeks and that she would respect my space and follow my rules. I felt torn because I love my cousin and want to help, but I also know from experience that temporary stays with Megan can quickly turn into extended ones. I told her that I couldn't have her live with me. I explained that my apartment is small. I work from home several days a week, and my life relies on a calm and predictable environment. I also said I was happy to support her in other ways, helping her find a short-term rental or Airbnb, assisting her in contacting other family or friends who might host her for a few nights, or helping her look for a new apartment. I tried to communicate that my refusal wasn't a lack of care, just a need to maintain my personal space and stability. Megan was upset. She accused me of being selfish and said I was putting my comfort above our relationship. She said that family should support each other in emergencies and that I was the only person she trusted to help her. I reminded her that refusing to let her stay doesn't mean I don't care. It just means I need to protect my home and mental health. She said I was being rigid and didn't understand how difficult her situation was. Over the next few days, Megan began contacting me constantly, sending long messages describing her predicament and implying that I was failing her as a family member. She also started mentioning to mutual friends that I refused to let her stay, which made me feel guilty and anxious. I tried to respond calmly, reiterating that I couldn't host her, but that I was willing to help in other ways, but it didn't seem to satisfy her. I considered compromise. I thought about letting her stay for a single night or allowing her to store some belongings temporarily while she found another place. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that even short-term arrangements could easily extend into weeks or months, and my apartment isn't set up for that. I also worried about the emotional consequences. Megan can be intense and emotional when stressed, and having her in my apartment could lead to arguments or resentment, straining our relationship permanently. Some friends and family have said I should just let her stay for a few days, arguing that it's a crisis and I should be there for her. Others support my decision, pointing out that boundaries are necessary for healthy relationships and that allowing her to move in could create long-term stress. I feel guilty because I want to support Megan, but I also know that compromising my home and routine could cause more harm than good. Megan's persistence has started affecting my day-to-day life. I feel anxious whenever my phone rings or when she sends messages asking if I've changed my mind. The stress has made it hard to focus on work and has caused tension in my other relationships. I've tried explaining that my refusal isn't personal, but she interprets it as rejection. I've also helped her research temporary housing options, offered to contribute to a short-term rental, and suggested friends who might host her for a night or two. But none of this seems enough. So, AITA for refusing to let my cousin stay with me after she lost her apartment. I want to support her in ways that are meaningful without compromising my own life and mental health. I've offered alternative solutions and compromise, but she and some family members interpret my refusal as selfish. Every day, I feel torn between helping her and protecting my stability, and I don't know if standing firm makes me the asshole. I want to maintain our relationship without sacrificing my home or peace of mind, but it feels like no matter what I do, someone will think I'm being unreasonable. I've tried to find a solution that works for both of us, but I feel trapped between compassion and self-preservation, and I'm unsure if my decision will permanently damage our bond. I want to be there for her, but I also need to protect my own space and sanity. AITA for confronting my sister about her parenting choices and causing a huge family rift. This situation has gotten completely out of hand, and I'm still not sure if I overstepped, so I need some perspective. A few months ago, my 32F sister, Emily, 30F, had her second child, a baby boy named Max. Emily has always been a little overprotective, but with her first child, it was mostly harmless. However, with Max, things have escalated to what I feel is extreme and unnecessary. She doesn't let anyone hold him unless she's watching. She refuses to let him sleep in a crib because she's convinced he'll wake up in the middle of the night crying for no reason, and she has a strict no visitors policy. The few times I've been allowed to see him, she's hovering over me the entire time, correcting how I hold him or telling me to be careful, you'll drop him. I have 2 kids of my own, age 5 and 2, and I've raised them without helicoptering constantly. I know how to hold, feed, and entertain babies safely. But Emily seems to think I'm incapable just because I have a different parenting style. My husband, Dan, 34M, also tried visiting, and Emily made a point of showing him how to support the baby and lecturing him on proper diaper techniques. It felt condescending and humiliating. For months, I tried to bite my tongue. I didn't want to upset Emily or create tension, but during a recent family barbecue, something snapped. Emily's in-laws were visiting, and she was arguing with them about bedtime routines, refusing their advice and insisting that only her way was right. My parents were caught in the middle, trying to mediate. I finally said, "Emily, it's your child, and your rules are your choice, but everyone else is capable of contributing without being micromanaged. It's okay to let people help without turning it into a performance." Emily lost it. She started yelling that I was attacking her and implying she was a bad mother. She told everyone that I was jealous because I don't have the perfect life like her. The barbecue ended with my parents looking uncomfortable, Emily storming out with Max, and me standing there in shock. Over the next week, Emily blocked me on all social media and refused to answer calls or texts. My parents are upset with both of us, saying I should have kept my mouth shut, but also acknowledging that Emily's behavior is extreme. Dan thinks I handled it the only way I could, but he also admitted it might have been better to wait until Emily calmed down before saying anything. The tension has now spread to the rest of the family. My older sister, Claire, has taken Emily's side and says I shouldn't interfere with another parent's choices. Some cousins are agreeing with me, saying Emily is too controlling. My parents have basically stopped talking about family gatherings because they're afraid it will trigger another fight. Emily has sent a long text to my mom explaining that she feels I don't respect boundaries and that I need to apologize for humiliating her in front of the family. I feel like I should apologize for the way I phrase things, but not for the sentiment. I believe it's reasonable to say that she's overbearing and that it's okay to let others help with her child. My main worry is that I may have caused a permanent rift. I love my sister, but I also feel strongly that her parenting style is suffocating not just her family, but anyone who wants to be involved with Max. I've tried explaining to friends what happened, and some think I was right to speak up, while others say I should have just kept quiet to avoid conflict. I'm torn because I don't want to lose my sister over this, but I also can't ignore what I see as harmful behavior. I feel that if I stay silent, it will only reinforce her extreme behavior and make family interactions more stressful in the long term. On the other hand, I understand that criticizing someone's parenting, especially publicly, is sensitive, and maybe I should have approached it differently. So AITA for confronting my sister about her parenting in front of the family. Even though I feel her behavior is overbearing and needs to be addressed, I genuinely don't want to cause a permanent estrangement, but I also can't pretend that everything is fine when it's creating tension for everyone. I've thought about writing a private message to Emily apologizing for the delivery, but reiterating my concern, but I'm worried it will come off as passive-aggressive. I'm also considering just giving her time and hoping she reaches out first, but that feels like letting her control the narrative and ignore her own behavior. The situation is exhausting. Every family gathering now has this underlying tension, and I feel guilty for being the one who started it, but also frustrated that my sister refuses to see her own role. I just don't know if I crossed a line by confronting her in front of everyone, or if her reaction is what's unreasonable. I feel stuck in a no-win scenario where either choice might damage our relationship permanently. AITA for refusing to let my childhood friend move in with me indefinitely, even though she insists I owe her after all the help she gave me over the years. This is going to be long, but I want to provide all the context so people understand why I feel conflicted. I, 33F, have a childhood friend, Laura, 32F, who has been in my life since we were in elementary school. Over the years, we've supported each other in ways that I thought were mutual. She helped me through tough times, including breakups, family problems, and financial struggles during college. She let me stay with her a few times when I had nowhere else to go, lent me money when I needed it, and always offered advice when I faced difficulties. I've always appreciated her support and thought we had a balanced friendship. About 4 months ago, Laura went through a particularly messy breakup and lost her apartment due to financial issues. She called me in tears, saying she had nowhere to go and asked if she could move in with me temporarily while she got back on her feet. At the time, I was living in a 2-bedroom apartment with my partner, Dan, 34M, and our 4-year-old daughter. I hesitated because I knew adding another adult to the household long-term would be stressful, but I ultimately agreed to a short-term stay. I told her clearly that she needed to find a job, secure a place to live, and contribute to household chores if she stayed. Laura agreed. The first couple of weeks were fine. She stayed in the guest room, kept her space mostly tidy, and seemed motivated to find a new apartment and work. I helped her update her resume and even applied to several job openings with her. I also showed her some listings and helped her understand the rental application process. However, after about a month, it became clear that she wasn't taking things seriously. She began sleeping in late, spending the majority of her days on social media or watching TV, and hardly applied for jobs. She also started leaving dirty dishes in the sink, piles of laundry around the apartment, and personal belongings in common areas. She invited friends over frequently without asking, sometimes multiple people at a time, which disrupted our household. I tried several serious conversations with her. I reminded her that the stay was temporary and that living here indefinitely was not an option. I explained that my household has routines, responsibilities, and a child whose life could not be disrupted indefinitely. I told her that continuing to live here without actively contributing or searching for independent housing would create tension and stress for everyone. Laura reacted defensively, saying I was being ungrateful and selfish because of all the support she had given me in the past. She insists that I owe her, and that refusing to let her stay long-term is cruel and damaging to our friendship. This situation has caused major tension in my household. Dan is frustrated because the apartment feels constantly crowded and our routines are disrupted. Even small tasks like cooking, relaxing in the living room, or maintaining bedtime schedules for our daughter have become complicated because Laura dominates common spaces and disregards agreed-upon rules. Our daughter has also been stressed by the change in environment, which adds another layer of concern. I've tried multiple compromises. I offered to help her with a rental deposit, suggested short-term sublets or Airbnb options, and even offered to extend her stay for a strictly defined period if she actively looked for jobs and apartments. She refused all alternatives, insisting that only living here full-time would work for her. She has also involved other mutual friends and family members, telling them I was being cruel and refusing to help a friend in need, which has caused additional pressure. Some friends have messaged me saying I should just let her stay because of all she did for me in the past. I feel torn because I want to help Laura, but I also feel manipulated. Giving in would not help her. It would allow her to avoid responsibility and would likely create resentment on both sides. I've supported her in other ways, emotionally, practically, and financially at times, but living together indefinitely under these circumstances is not support. It is a burden. I'm also concerned about precedent. If I allow her to stay indefinitely without contributing or making an effort, it may encourage her to rely on me for other things in the future and permanently alter our relationship in my household. I've tried maintaining clear boundaries, offered reasonable alternatives, and communicated respectfully, but nothing seems to satisfy her. So, AITA for refusing to let my childhood friend move in with me indefinitely, even though she insists I owe her after all the help she gave me over the years. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.